Eli stood in the bustling marketplace of the alien city, overwhelmed by the sights and sounds of a world that was so different from Earth. His mission had brought him to this faraway planet, and everything about it fascinated him. Towering structures, made of materials he couldn't even name, reached up to the sky, while strange creatures moved about with ease. The air was thick with the scent of alien spices, and strange music drifted through the air. Despite all the excitement around him, Eli found himself staring at one thing in particular. A woman stood across the square, her posture regal but unassuming. She was surrounded by a small group of people, but none of them seemed to matter. His eyes were drawn to her like a magnet. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen before. Her features were striking, elegant, yet delicate. The way the light played off her skin made her seem almost ethereal. Eli couldn't help himself. He whispered to no one in particular, "She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen."
Oh.
The moment the words left his lips, he froze. A strange feeling swept over him. It was as if the whole world had gone silent. The woman's head turned slowly, her piercing gaze locking onto his. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Her eyes were a shade of blue he had never seen before, deep and almost glowing. They held a certain mystery, something he couldn't quite place. Eli's heart raced. He wasn't sure if he had been caught staring, but the woman didn't look away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if contemplating him. Her expression was calm, almost curious. He felt a strange warmth spread through him, a feeling of being both seen and understood even though they had never spoken. But then, as if sensing the tension in the air, she turned away and rejoined the group. Eli stood frozen, his mind racing. What had just happened? He had never believed in love at first sight, but this felt different. His heart beat loudly in his chest, and his hands felt clammy. He had only whispered a passing thought, but it seemed to have reached her somehow. For the rest of the day, Eli couldn't stop thinking about her. His mission, which was supposed to be a simple diplomatic trip, suddenly felt insignificant. He spent the next few hours wandering around the city, trying to push thoughts of her out of his mind. But every time he closed his eyes, her face appeared, as if imprinted on his mind. That night, as he sat alone in his room, Eli couldn't shake the feeling of having met someone extraordinary. There was something about her, something that called to him. He wondered who she was, where she came from, and why he had felt such a strong connection in such a brief moment. He knew it was foolish to think too much about it. After all, he was just a human diplomat here to represent Earth in a peaceful mission. She was probably someone important, someone beyond his reach. But something told him he hadn't seen the last of her. The next morning, Eli returned to the marketplace. He had no real plan, but he couldn't help but hope he might catch another glimpse of her. As he walked through the crowded square, he kept his eyes open, scanning the area. He had almost given up when he spotted her. She was standing by a stall, talking to an elderly vendor. She wore a long, flowing robe of deep purple, and her presence seemed to make everything around her pause. Eli took a deep breath and gathered his courage. He had to talk to her. The idea of leaving without speaking to her seemed unbearable. He moved closer, careful not to make it obvious that he was watching her. As he neared, he realized that she was alone, the vendor busy with another customer. Taking a deep breath, Eli approached. He wasn't sure what to say, but before he could speak, she turned and met his gaze. There it was, again that feeling, as if everything else faded away, leaving only the two of them. Her eyes softened, and she gave him a small smile, one that sent his heart into overdrive. "You're the one from yesterday," she said, her voice soft yet commanding, with an accent Eli couldn't quite place. "I heard you." Eli blinked, stunned. I didn't mean to offend you," he stammered. "I was just ... thinking out loud." She smiled again, this time more warmly. "I'm not offended," she said. "I find it interesting that you think such things about someone you've just met." Eli felt a rush of warmth spread through him. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even annoyed. In fact, she seemed intrigued by him. His nerves began to settle, and he smiled awkwardly, unsure of what to say next. "I'm Eli," he said, extending a hand. I'm here on a diplomatic mission, but I couldn't help but wonder who you are." She regarded him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to Eli's surprise, she took his hand. "My name is Zara," she replied, "and I think it's safe to say you're not like most people here." Eli's heart skipped a beat. This was it. He had met her again. This time there was a spark of chance for something more. The following days passed in a blur for Eli. He found himself wandering the streets of the alien city, unable to focus on anything other than Zara since their brief encounter in the marketplace. She had been on his mind constantly. Her smile, the way her eyes held a quiet mystery, it was all he could think about. He couldn't explain why, but something deep inside him told him that their meeting was more than just a coincidence. Eli had been assigned to a diplomatic mission on the planet. But as each hour passed, the mission seemed less and less important. He had come to represent Earth, yes, but now he felt as though his purpose here was connected to something much greater. Zara's presence had somehow shifted everything. He had hoped to bump into her again, but he had no idea where to look. The alien city was vast, filled with strange districts and towering buildings that seemed to go on forever. Yet every time he thought about giving up, a sense of urgency pressed him forward. He had to see her again. That afternoon, Eli found himself wandering near the city's central plaza. As he walked through the busy streets, he felt a strange pull, as if the universe was guiding him to the right place at the right time. He paused, unsure of what had stopped him. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching for a glimpse of her, and then, there she was. Zara stood at the edge of the plaza, her back to him, speaking to a group of people dressed in similar attire. She wore the same deep purple robe, and her hair cascaded down her back like waves of midnight. She looked as regal as she did the first time Eli saw her, yet there was something else about her this time. A quiet strength radiated from her, a confidence that made her even more striking than before. Eli hesitated. Should he approach her again? What if she didn't want to talk to him? But his heart urged him forward. He had to try. This wasn't just about attraction anymore. There was something deeper, something pulling them together. Taking a deep breath, Eli walked up to her, hoping that this time he wouldn't make a fool of himself. He was almost there when Zara turned. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything else around them seemed to fade away. The noise, the people, the busy marketplace, all of it disappeared as they locked gazes once more. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Eli could feel the weight of her stare, but instead of the nervousness he had felt before, there was only calm. It was as if he had known her for a lifetime, as if their connection was not new, but something that had always been. "Eli," Zara said, her voice soft yet steady. She didn't sound surprised to see him again, as if she had expected it. "I didn't think I would see you so soon." Eli swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. I couldn't stop thinking about you," he admitted, his voice quieter than he intended. "I never expected to meet someone like you." Zara raised an eyebrow, but there was no judgment in her expression. "Someone like me?" she asked, her tone curious but gentle. "Someone so? ... Different," Eli replied, struggling to find the right words. "So ... beautiful, and yet ... mysterious." Zara looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. Then, with a faint smile, she spoke again. "I'm not used to being admired in such a way. Most people here see me as someone to be protected, someone to be kept distant. But you ... She paused, glancing around at the crowd before returning her gaze to him. "You seem to see me differently." Eli's heart beat faster. It was true. He didn't see her as a princess, or a person to be admired from afar. He saw her as a woman, someone who had her own struggles, her own desires. He wanted to know her, not just her title. "I see you as a person, Zara, not a symbol, not an heir to a throne. Just ... you." Zara's eyes softened. For the first time, Eli saw a glimpse of something else in her vulnerability, quiet sadness that she had hidden so well. "I wish I could say the same," she murmured. "But I don't think I'm allowed to be just a person. My world doesn't work that way." Before Eli could respond, A group of people approached. They seemed to be in a hurry, and they looked at Zara with a mixture of respect and concern. Zara turned to face them, her expression hardening. "Excuse me," she said, her voice suddenly all business. "I have matters to attend to." Eli watched as she began to walk away, her posture shifting back to the graceful, regal figure she had been before. His chest tightened with an unfamiliar, feeling a mix of longing and frustration. He didn't want their conversation to end like this, but he understood. She had responsibilities, and he was just a human diplomat who had wandered into her life by chance. As Zara disappeared into the crowd, Eli stood there for a moment, lost in thought. He couldn't explain why he felt so strongly about her. He had barely spoken to her, yet it felt as though they had known each other forever. It was foolish, maybe. But there was something about Zara that he couldn't ignore. "Maybe I'll see her again," Eli whispered to himself, a small, hopeful smile on his face. The days that followed were strangely quiet. Eli threw himself back into his mission, but his mind was never far from Zara. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. Every time he walked through the alien city, he expected to see her again. But she was always just out of reach. He tried to ignore the growing curiosity inside him, the way it pulled him toward her. But no matter how hard he focused on his work, she lingered in the back of his mind, like a melody he couldn't shake. The mysterious connection he felt with her only seemed to grow stronger, despite their brief and simple exchanges. One evening, while walking through the market, Eli's eyes caught a familiar sight. There, across the street, was Zara. She was standing with a few people. But this time, there was something different about her. She didn't seem as distant, as untouchable as before. Instead, she was looking around, her gaze more relaxed, her posture less rigid. Eli hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should approach her again. He didn't want to seem too forward or make her uncomfortable. But something inside him urged him to take the chance. After all, what did he have to lose? He took a deep breath and walked toward her. As he approached, Zara noticed him almost immediately. Her face lit up with a smile that seemed genuine, not forced. It was the first time he had seen her truly smile, and the sight made his heart race. She waved at him, and without waiting for him to speak, she said, "I thought I might see you again." Eli was taken aback. "You did?" he asked, surprised that she had been expecting him. Zara laughed softly, her eyes sparkling. "Not sure why, but ... yes. It feels like we were meant to cross paths again." Her voice was warm, and there was a sincerity to it that made Eli feel at ease. For the first time since meeting her, he didn't feel nervous or out of place. It was as if they were simply two people having a conversation, not strangers from completely different worlds. "You're right," Eli replied, smiling shyly. I couldn't stop thinking about you after our first meeting. I didn't expect to see you again." "I'm glad you did," she said, stepping closer to him. "I was hoping we could talk." Eli's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to actually get to know her. "Of course," he said quickly, "I'd like that." Zara led him away from the busy market street and toward a quieter part of the city. The streets here were lined with tall, curved buildings that shimmered in the soft light of the setting sun. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene, and Eli felt like he was stepping into another world entirely. They walked in silence for a while, both of them lost in thought. Finally, Zara spoke. "I don't normally open up to people," she said, her voice soft, "especially not like this. But something about you, it's different. I don't know why, but I feel like I can trust you." Eli felt a rush of warmth at her words. Didn't know why she trusted him either, but he was grateful for it. He had been wondering about her for days, what kind of life she led, what kind of person she was behind the royal facade. Now it seemed like he might finally get a glimpse into that hidden side of her. "You don't have to explain anything to me," Eli said, his voice gentle. "I'm just happy to be here with you." Zara smiled, the faintest hint of sadness in her eyes. "It's strange," she said, looking down at the ground. "I have everything anyone could want. Power, wealth, influence, but I don't feel free. I'm constantly surrounded by people who want something from me. I've never been able to live for myself. Eli listened carefully, understanding more than she might realize. He could hear the quiet longing in her words, the desire for something beyond the constraints of her royal duties. It wasn't hard to imagine how isolating that could be, how difficult it must be to never feel truly seen for who you were, rather than what you represented. I can't imagine what that must be like, Eli said quietly. But I do understand what it's like to feel trapped by expectations. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is telling you who to be, and you can't escape it. Zara looked up at him, surprised by his honesty. You really understand? I do, he replied. It's not easy to live up to what others expect of you. I think we all want to be accepted for who we truly are, not just what others want us to be. They shared a long look, one that spoke volumes. In that moment, Eli felt a deeper connection to her than he had ever expected. It was as if they had both been living under the weight of expectations, but here, in this quiet moment, they could just be themselves. No titles, no duties, just two people trying to make sense of the world. Zara smiled softly. Thank you, Eli, she said, for listening, for seeing me. Eli's heart warmed at her words. Of course, I'm glad I could be here. They walked together in silence for a while longer, both of them enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. For once, Eli felt like he wasn't just a diplomat from Earth, but someone who was truly part of this strange new world. And as he looked at Zara, he knew that whatever path their friendship bore, whatever it was, might take, it would be worth every step. The days following Eli and Zara's quiet conversation marked the beginning of something neither of them had expected. They spent more time together, often walking through the quiet streets or sitting in peaceful gardens, sharing thoughts and stories of their vastly different worlds. Zara opened up more about her life, her duties as a princess, and the weight she carried on her shoulders. Eli listened, offering support, but also sharing pieces of his own life, his mission on this distant planet, his family back on Earth, and the dreams he had of a world where things didn't always feel so controlled. Despite their growing connection, the danger that hovered over Zara's life became more apparent each day. It wasn't just her royal status that made her a target, it was the enemies that wanted to use her, the people who saw her as a pawn in their political games. Her every move was calculated by others, and Eli could see how much that hurt her. Even as she tried to be free of the royal constraints, her life was never her own. Eli began to notice the subtle changes in Zara's demeanor, how she looked over her shoulder when they walked in public, how her expression turned serious whenever they were approached by anyone in uniform. It wasn't until one evening, as they walked together through the market, that the threat made itself known. They were laughing about something small, a funny mistake Eli had made while trying to speak the alien language, when a man stepped into their path. Zara froze, and Eli's heart skipped a beat as he took in the man's appearance. He wore dark formal clothing, a long cloak that concealed his face and most of his features. But it was the way he stood, moving and calculating, that made Eli's instincts scream. Your Highness, the man said, his voice smooth, almost a calm. The council requests your presence immediately. Zara's face hardened in response. I have nothing to say to the council, she replied, her tone cool but firm. Eli could see the tension in her posture, the way her shoulders stiffened. He stepped closer to her, standing just a little bit in front of her, as if offering protection. What does the council want with Zara? Eli asked, his voice steady, though his heart raced with uncertainty. The man's eyes flicked to Eli, studying him for a moment before turning back to Zara. It's not for you to worry about, human, the man said with a slight sneer in his voice. The princess will come with us. Zara's eyes narrowed. Not a prisoner to be taken at will. If the council wishes to speak to me, they can come here, not drag me around like a piece of property. Eli noticed the way the man's jaw tightened at her words. It was clear that Zara's defiance wasn't something he had expected, but Eli could also sense the danger rising in the air. The man didn't care for Zara's defiance. He wasn't going to leave without getting what he came for. Please, the man said, his tone no longer calm but cold and threatening. The princess will come with me now, or things will get complicated. Eli's hand instinctively moved toward his side, where he carried a small weapon given to him by the local authorities for self-defense. But even as his fingers brushed the grip, he knew it wasn't enough. This man wasn't someone Eli could fight off with a small weapon. The people around them, while they were watching, didn't seem eager to intervene. Zara seemed to sense the growing tension as well. She reached out, gently taking Eli's arm and pulling him back. "It's all right," she said softly, her voice more calm than before. "I'll go with him. But only on my terms." Eli looked at her, searching her face for signs of fear or hesitation, but there was none. Zara's gaze was determined, focused. She was used to being in control. Even when the situation seemed impossible. "You don't have to do this," Eli said quietly, his voice laced with concern. "You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go." Zara gave him a small, reassuring smile. "This is something I have to face, Eli. It's not your fight." "But it is," Eli replied, his voice firm. "It's my fight now, too." She turned to the man, giving him a look that was both challenging and calm. "I will come with you," she said, "but understand this. If you so much as lay a hand on me or my companion, you'll regret it." The man's eyes flicked briefly to Eli, then back to Zara. For a moment, there was only silence, the weight of the situation hanging in the air. Then, without another word, the man nodded and turned, motioning for them to follow. Eli and Zara walked behind him, though the tension between them was palpable. As they moved through the winding streets, Eli couldn't help but wonder what was happening behind the scenes. Zara was clearly a woman of power, but even she couldn't escape the forces that pulled her in different directions. And the more he saw of it, the more he realized just how much danger she was in, how much they were both in, as they reached the council building. A large structure that loomed like a fortress at the edge of the city. Eli felt a knot form in his stomach. This was no longer just a mission. It was about Zara's safety. He would do whatever it took to protect her. Inside, the council was waiting. The shadows of power loomed large in the cold, sterile room. And Eli knew that this was only the beginning. The danger Zara faced was far from over. Inside the council building, the atmosphere was tense. Eli stood beside Zara, feeling more out of place than ever. The grand hall was filled with alien leaders, each one looking at them with sharp eyes. The space was cold, with walls made of smooth, dark material that reflected the dim light from above. It felt like a place where decisions were made in silence, where everything had a cost. Zara walked ahead, her head held high. But Eli noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. She was the princess, yet here she didn't seem like someone in control. She seemed smaller, almost fragile in the face of so much power. It was hard for Eli to ignore the way the other council members watched her, some with admiration, others with something else, something less friendly. They were led to a large round table in the center of the room. The council members were seated around it, and Eli was surprised to see that they were all very different from each other alien species from various corners of the galaxy. Some had features that were almost too strange to comprehend. Others looked more human, but each one carried the weight of influence in their eyes. Zara took her place at the table, and Eli stood behind her, feeling the eyes of the council turn toward him. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a casual meeting. This was serious. And Zara was at the center of it all. "Your Highness," one of the council members began, his voice thick with authority, "we have called you here today because your actions are becoming a problem. You are becoming unpredictable." Zara's expression remained neutral, but Eli could feel the change in her. There was a storm inside her, a force she kept hidden. "I've done nothing but what is required of me," she said, her voice steady but cold. "Nothing has changed." The council member shook his head slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Your Highness, you have been seen walking freely through the city with a human. This is not the behavior expected from someone of your status." Eli felt his heart skip a beat. He didn't know how much Zara had shared with the council, but he could see that they weren't pleased with her growing connection to him. He knew that he was just a small part of the bigger picture, but it still stung. Zara didn't flinch. "I am more than just a princess," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I am a person, and I have the right to choose who I spend time with. If you cannot accept that, then perhaps you should reconsider your expectations of me." The room grew quiet. Eli could feel the tension rising, thick in the air. Some of the council members exchanged glances, their eyes narrowed. But there was one member who had remained silent, a woman with sharp features and a calm expression. She hadn't spoken since the beginning, and now she finally leaned forward. "Enough," the woman said, her voice low but filled with power. "Zara, we did not bring you here to lecture you on your choices. We brought you here because your actions are threatening the balance of power. The galaxy cannot afford instability, especially not from someone as important as you." Zara's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean by that?" The woman's gaze flicked to Eli before returning to Zara. "Your relationship with this human threatens everything. You are bound by your royal duties, Zara, and your heart, it seems, is not yours to give away so easily." Eli could see that Zara was struggling to hold her ground. It was clear that the council had always expected her to remain distant, a figurehead who could never truly belong to herself. The pressure was suffocating. "Zara," the woman continued, her tone softening, "you cannot deny that there are consequences to every decision you make. Your future is not just your own. It belongs to your people, to your family, and to the galaxy. You must understand that." Eli felt a wave of anger wash over him. He didn't belong here. He didn't understand their politics, but he knew one thing. Zara was more than just a pawn in a game of power. She was a person, with her own desires, her own dreams. She deserved more than this cold, calculated life. "I won't be controlled," Zara said firmly, her voice unwavering. "You may control the politics, the people, and the land, but you do not control my heart. You will not control who I choose to spend my time with. Not now, not ever." For a moment, the room was silent. Eli could see the council members looking at each other, weighing Zara's words carefully. Some seemed angry, others surprised. But no one spoke. The woman who had been speaking before leaned back in her chair, a small, almost amused smile on her face. "You are strong, Zara," she said quietly. "But strength alone will not protect. There are forces at work here that you cannot even begin to understand." Zara stood up, her expression calm but resolute. "I don't need protection," she said. "I've spent my life listening to people who tell me what to do, what to feel, but I am done being told who I am. I am Zara, and I will make my own choices." The council members seemed stunned by her outburst, but there was nothing they could say. Zara's defiance was undeniable, and in that moment, Eli saw something in her that he hadn't before. It wasn't just courage, it was a quiet strength, a woman ready to fight for her own future, no matter the cost. As they left the council building, the weight of the encounter hung heavy between them. Zara remained silent, lost in thought, but Eli couldn't help but admire her. She was no longer just the distant princess. She was a person, someone willing to fight for what she wanted, even if it meant going against the powerful forces around her. "I'm with you, Zara," Eli said quietly as they walked away. "Whatever happens next, I'll be here." Zara glanced at him, her expression softening just slightly. "Thank you, Eli," she whispered, her voice full of meaning. And for the first time since their meeting, she reached out and took his hand. The days following their visit to the council were filled with tension. Zara had made it clear to the council that she would not bend to their demands, but Eli could feel the storm brewing. He saw it in her eyes. She was determined, but she was also exhausted. The pressure was building, and it was only a matter of time before something would break. Eli had spent the last few days with Zara, trying to offer her comfort. They would walk together through the quiet gardens, away from the eyes of the council and their spies. But even in those peaceful moments, he could sense the weight on her shoulders. One evening, as they sat on a bench in the garden, Zara turned to him. Her eyes were tired, but there was a new determination in them. "Eli," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I need to make a choice that could change everything." Eli looked at her, his heart racing. "What do you mean, Zara?" hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. I have spent my whole life living by other people's rules, my family's expectations, the council's demands. The pressure of being a princess, it's been suffocating. I thought I could handle it, that I could do what was expected of me. But now, with everything that's happened, I know I can't keep living this way. Eli's heart ached for her. He could see the pain in her eyes, the struggle she had been hiding. She had never wanted this life. She had always been expected to be a symbol of power, a figurehead. But deep down, she was just like him, wanting freedom, wanting to make her own choices. I don't want to be forced into a life I didn't choose, Zara continued, her voice trembling slightly. Can't marry someone I don't love. I can't become the ruler they want me to be if it means losing myself in the process. But if I refuse, there will be consequences. Eli took her hand gently, his heart swelling with emotion. You don't have to do this alone, Zara. You have a choice. I know it's hard, but you don't have to give up who you are to please them. Zara looked at him, her expression softening. I know. The stakes are high, if I refuse to follow through with my royal duties. The entire galaxy could fall into chaos. The alliances we have are fragile, and the council will never forgive me. Eli didn't know what to say. He had never been in a situation like this where the choices were so heavy, so dangerous. But one thing was clear to him. Zara needed to make this decision for herself, and he would be there for her no matter what. You can't keep living for others, Zara, Eli said, his voice steady. Your life is yours to live. No one else can tell you what you should do with it. Zara looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his eyes. Then, slowly, she nodded. You're right. But it's not just my life that's at stake. It's the people I care about. Everything I've ever known, it could all change. Eli squeezed her hand, offering her a reassuring smile. Then it's even more important that you make the right choice for yourself. You deserve to be happy, Zara. You deserve to be free. She smiled back, though it was tinged with sadness. Thank you, Eli. You don't know how much that means to me. Sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Zara seemed lost in thought, her mind racing with possibilities. Eli couldn't help but wonder what her decision would be, knowing that whatever choice she made, there would be no going back. The next day, Zara gathered the courage to speak with the council again. She had decided that it was time to face them, to take control of her own future. Eli stood by her side, offering his support, though he knew he couldn't make the decision for her. They walked into the council chamber together, the same cold, sterile room where Zara had faced their judgment before. This time, though, the air was different. There was a sense of finality in Zara's steps, as if she had already made her mind up. The council members watched her with quiet anticipation. They knew that this meeting would not go as they had planned. Zara stood tall before them, her posture regal but confident. She looked at each council member in turn, her gaze unwavering. I've come to make my decision, she said, her voice steady. I will not marry for the good of the empire. I will not live my life according to your expectations. There was a moment of stunned silence. The council members exchanged shocked glances, as if they had never expected Zara to defy them so boldly. You cannot do this, one of the members said, his voice rising in anger. You are the future of the empire, Zara. If you refuse, there will be consequences. Zara's eyes flashed with determination. I know the consequences, she replied, but I am not afraid. I will not sacrifice my happiness for a throne I never asked for. Eli felt his heart swell with pride as he watched Zara stand her ground. She was no longer just a princess, no longer just a figurehead. She was a woman, making her own choices, living her own life, and for the first time, Zara felt free. The days that followed Zara's bold decision were filled with tension. Word of her refusal to marry the chosen prince and her stance against the council spread quickly throughout the planet. Some supported her bravery, while others feared the consequences of her actions. But for Zara, there was no turning back. She had chosen to live her life on her own terms, and though the road ahead would be difficult, she was ready to face whatever came her way. Eli had been by her side every step of the way. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, he remained. Her steady presence. They spent long nights talking about the future, about what it would mean for her to step away from the life she had known. And though they both knew the stakes were high, neither of them could deny the bond that had grown between them. One morning, as they walked together through the palace gardens, Zara stopped and turned to face Eli. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows on the ground. She looked at him, her expression serious. But there was something else. There's something softer, almost fragile. Eli, she said quietly, I've made my choice. But I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm not sure if I can keep fighting. Against the council. The consequences might be too much for me to handle, for us to handle. Eli took her hands in his heart aching at the uncertainty in her voice. Zara, whatever happens, you don't have to face it alone. I'm with you, and I always will be. Her eyes searched his, and for the first time she let down her guard completely. I've spent so long hiding behind my title, behind my responsibilities. But I want to know what it's like to just be me, to live freely. You've shown me that it's possible. Eli smiled gently, his thumb brushing the back of her hand. Then we'll find a way. Together. Zara squeezed his hands, taking a deep breath. I know the council won't forgive me. They've made it clear that if I don't follow their orders, they'll strip me of my title, my position. They'll leave me with nothing. Eli's heart clenched. He knew the consequences of Zara's decision were severe, but he also knew that living a life controlled by others was no life at all. You don't need their title to be important. You've always been important, Zara. You've always had the power to change things. She smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. Maybe, but it's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone I care about. The future of this planet, the people I've sworn to protect, it's all tied up in this decision. Zaras. Words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of responsibility. Eli knew she wasn't just thinking of herself. She was thinking of her people, her family, and the future of a planet that depended on her choices. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the only way to truly protect the future was for Zara to be true to herself. Zara, Eli said softly, sometimes the hardest thing to do is choose what's right for you, not what's expected of you. But if you choose what's right for you, you'll find the strength to face whatever comes next. Zara looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. You're right, Eli. I've spent my whole life doing what was expected of me. But now I need to do what feels right for me. I need to take control of my future, even if it means losing everything. Paused, looking out across the gardens, the weight of her words settling over her. I know there's no turning back. Once I make this decision, there's no going back to the life I knew. But maybe that's what I need. Maybe that's the only way I can find true freedom. Eli stepped closer, taking her hands in his once more. You don't have to make this decision alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. You don't have to lose everything to find yourself. We'll build something new, together. For the first time in a long while, Zara allowed herself to feel the weight of her choice. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Eli by her side, someone who believed in her, someone who didn't see her as a symbol or a princess, but as a person. Evening, Zara made her final decision. She summoned the council to a meeting, her heart heavy with the knowledge that this would be the turning point in her life. Eli stood beside her as they entered the council chamber, the room silent with anticipation. The council members were already seated, their eyes fixed on Zara as she took her place at the front of the room. I've come to a decision, Zara said, her voice steady, though there was a fire in her eyes. I will not marry the prince you've chosen for me. I will not be a pawn in your political games. I am no longer bound by your expectations. My life is my own. The room was silent for a moment, and then the council members began to murmur among themselves. Some were angry, others shocked, but none were prepared for what came next. I will no longer serve as the figurehead you want me to be, Zara. Continued, I choose my own path, and I will not apologize for it. Eli stood by her side, proud of the strength she had shown. Zara had made her choice. It wasn't an easy one, but it was hers to make. She had chosen freedom, and in doing so, she had chosen herself. The council had no choice but to accept her decision. Zara's royal title would be stripped, but she was free to live her life on her own terms, free to love who she chose, and free to make her own future. As they left the council building, Zara turned to Eli, a small smile on her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me." Eli smiled back, his heart full. "I always will." And together they walked into the unknown future, ready to face whatever came their way.